Brian's Book Bastion presents Modern Mustache Man. That's right, Modern Mustache Man is gone, and Babyface, back on. Welcome back to another episode of Brian's Book Bastion. This is now episode 8, and I think this is getting close to being what an actual season of TV would be, and we're probably better than that. There've been so many twists and turns. There's been climaxes, there's been breakups, there's been marriages. Just kidding. We've been watching Friends here. How many episodes is on a season of Friends?
I think it varies, but I think it's like mid-20s.
Mid-20s. So that means we're getting close to our season finale. So someone's either getting married, breaking up, or dying.
Which one is it, Brian? Because I'm involved in an awful lot of those.
More realistically, we'll be pumping out more videos here throughout the summer because I still have a bunch of books to read before my year goal is over. And that brings me to the subject of this video. I was perusing BookTube and I saw a few channels recently that were kind of talking about Goodreads dying or they're not using Goodreads anymore. And I was like, what? Fight me. I've talked about Goodreads a lot on this channel, and I guess I just assumed that most people use it because it seemed like the only outlet for readers online, at least for a time, as far as my thought processes went. But obviously now that I've joined the BookTube universe, I've realized that there's a lot more out there for readers online. But Goodreads still holds a special place in my heart. I started Goodreads, I think, like I've mentioned in another video, back in high school, and so I just feel really nostalgic about it. I was somebody that was kind of going around and advocating for Goodreads to a bunch of my friends. In fact, I did that for Jamie as well.
No, we've had this argument. I was on Goodreads before you.
Lies!
Check my membership.
Lies. It's up for debate.
It's literally not.
Regardless, I know back then Goodreads did help me at the time expand the books that I was reading. I know I was definitely in young adult land, and I have changed my reading habits a lot since then, and a lot of that can be attributed to Goodreads. So that's why I find it so interesting that there's a lot of comments about people leaving Goodreads now or thinking that it is dying. And it got me thinking about the other ways that I've been interacting with reading online. Reddit specifically comes to mind because you can go to any subreddit, whether it be a subreddit about an author or about books in general. There are plenty of forums on there for you to discuss your favorite books or your favorite authors with people that are really like-minded. BookTube, again, I didn't find out about it until later, but there were a bunch of obscure books that I was reading that I was hoping somebody else would have read somewhere out there. And seeing these people on BookTube review the books that I was starting to get into was a really satisfying experience for me to be able to hear somebody else discuss their thoughts when nobody else around me had even heard of the book that I was talking about. But I still really think that Goodreads is kind of the king of the court here. Heck, Goodreads is the reason I have this channel in the first place. I finished a reading goal for the first time last year, and I was thinking, hey, I can do this again and even expand more on that and create a channel to discuss all the books that I was putting on Goodreads every time I finished them. But I will bring up a point that I heard somebody else talk about in their video about why they're not using Goodreads anymore, and it specifically had to do with those reading challenges that are a big part of Goodreads. They were putting these absurd goals out there, like hundreds of books that they were supposed to read in a year, and so they felt that the books that they were actually reading were declining in quality because they were just trying to fill this quota. It actually discouraged them in their reading efforts, and I think some of the videos, they were saying that that discouragement showed itself in the next year where they were reading even fewer books than they were planning to read with that Goodreads goal because they were so demoralized by that lack in quality and that quota filling that they were having to go through with that previous lofty goal. Now, I didn't create a crazy goal, obviously. I'm only doing 20 books and I'm ahead of schedule right now, but I definitely think that because I've had deadlines, and it kind of has to do with the channel, but it does have to do overall with that Goodreads goal. I feel like I've been choosing books that are a lot shorter, even though traditionally I like to read books that are really large. I've felt twangs of that demoralization because I'm reading a lot of shorter books when I have those cravings for the long ones, which is why I kind of splurged and read Catch-22 a little while ago. Even though it's not as large as the books that I normally read, it definitely helped to get something that was getting up there in length. But I definitely get that argument. I think Goodreads, while it is motivating for a lot of people and while it does give good recommendations, there kind of does start to become this social pressure to start reading more or reading these books that aren't necessarily up your alley. You think of it in a different way with Facebook, where people are posting about all these great things in their lives, and it can make a lot of people within the current generation feel like they're not living up to these huge expectations to go to a different country or experience all these new things every weekend. I think that that same kind of pressure carries over to the Goodreads sphere, where people are seeing other people rave about these books, especially classics, for instance, where it's just generally recognized that it's a great novel, and somebody doesn't feel like it's a great novel to them. They start feeling that social pressure because everybody else is talking about it in those terms. So that definitely all makes sense to me, and I think that it's great that there are other means popping up for people to interact with books in a whole new way. I think BookTube in particular is great because you kind of get these segmented ideas where you're not talking necessarily about these huge goals overall. Sometimes it's just about one book that was particularly great, or like a video like this, you're just discussing literary ideas. But again, despite any setbacks that Goodreads might have, I do still think that it was a positive influence for me as a reader, and I really appreciate that platform. So now you've heard a little bit of my thoughts on it. You've heard that there are grumblings from around BookTube as a whole. So I'm curious to hear what you think about it. Do you generally like Goodreads as a social platform? Do you think that that pressure is there for people to read books that maybe they don't enjoy as much? Is the social side of Goodreads something that is negative to readers overall? What's your preferred way to interact with books and readers online? Do you think Goodreads needs any more competition? I'm curious to what your thoughts are on the matter, and I'm excited to see how readers kind of see Goodreads overall. As always, leave them in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And also, if you want to add me on Goodreads, just send me a message and we'll make it happen. Thanks for watching, and Whoa! Speed talking. And burp talking. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week for a discussion on The Stranger. Hopefully, it's a good read.